Hello and welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement. This is a special episode of the podcast. Had the opportunity to sit down and chat with Lee Whitwell. Lee Whitwell is a professional pickleball player, but more importantly, she is an ambassador of the sport, and I mean that in every sense of the word. She embodies competition out there. She embodies battle on the court, but she also embodies just a sense of awareness about the sport being bigger than any one of us individuals. She's always engaging with the fans. She's a very pleasant person to to interact with everybody who's at a tournament. Never turns her back on anybody out there. And this is an interesting conversation that Lee and I were able to have about pickleball, her thoughts. You're going to gain some insights into how she addresses the game from a mental standpoint. I think that'll be really helpful to you. Seeing it from her perspective as a very high level competitive tennis player who then transitioned over to pickleball, and how she approaches the sport. And she has trials and tribulations just like all of us do. And it was a pleasure to interview Lee. I've been itching to get this episode up, and now is the right time to broadcast it as part of the special episode. So please enjoy my interview with Lee Whitwell. Lee Whitwell.
Hello.
Great to see you. And hear you. Well, they're hearing you, so it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
In fairness, we just finished our interview for the summit. I said, Lee, can we just have a conversation for Pickleball Therapy? And Lee is a very gracious person, not just because she agreed. She's a gracious person, period. And she said, let's talk about it. And we were talking about, Pickleball Therapy being a place, a space for pickleball players who are maybe feeling frustrated, maybe they're feeling frustrated or losing focus, or sometimes upset at the game, things like that. And so I thought, Lee, if you could share with us some ideas, and ask you to share some ideas on the mental side of the game. And why don't we talk about it first? Let's be very practical. Let's talk about it. Lee Whitwell's in a very tough match, whether it's tennis or pickleball, whatever sport you want to choose, you're in a tough match. How does Lee Whitwell, what does Lee Whitwell reach out and grab from her reservoir of mental tips and tricks to get through those adverse times that we feel sometimes around on the court?
So asking me to reveal all my secrets?
Not one of them.
One of them. Wow.
For the good of the community, the pickleball community.
Well, now that you phrase it that.
There you go.
We all have bad days out there, and especially in competition, and when you're deep in the tank and things aren't going well. One of the things I do, besides breathing, right? Because 9 times out of 10, when things get tight and we start to put a lot of emphasis on we have to win this point, because if we don't win this point, we need the side out because we're going to lose the game. That's a lot of chatter that goes on in your head. And trust me, I'm the queen of chatter. I only share about 10% of what's in my head. The other 90 apparently is not PG-13 and cannot be said publicly. But we forget to breathe when all that chatter happens. And we put so much pressure in the moment that breathing becomes secondary. So breathing always has to be primary. And then the other thing, too, is realizing that a dink is a dink is a dink. Whether the score is 1-1 or 10-9 or 12-13, whatever the score is, a dink is still a dink. And if you've done the work and breathe through your shot, you are going to hit that shot because you can. The shot doesn't change because of the score. We change the shot because of the score, but the execution of the shot should never change. So it's understanding, doing the work, and knowing that no matter what the score is, you can execute that shot, 100 times out of 100 perfectly. And breathing. Those are the two main things. Now, I'm not going to lie. It's when you haven't done the work, whether it's, weather or work coming in, it's like your day's been, the days leading up to a tournament or shot for whatever reason, that's when it comes in, because you're like, I'm not grooved, I'm not dialed in, and it's like you just have to trust the process and breathe through the shot. Breathing is probably the single most important key, I would say, to managing your own stress levels.
Yeah. I mean, I can't second that enough. I mean, the breathing thing is just a lot of times you're missing or you're feeling tense. You look back and you realize that your chest is constricted, your shoulders are tight, everything's tied up because you're not even breathing through the process. So.
I mean, very few people are born without necks. So if you're watching yourself play and you can't see your neck and because your shoulders are up by your ears, I guarantee that you are not breathing.
Right.
And you know, if you have a death-like grip on your paddle and you are not breathing, it's
It'd be amazing if we could play the game. I've mused about this before, where you basically play a game where, you know, you and I were just playing, and then at some point there's like a light that flicks on, and we go, oh, okay, Lee, I guess we're done. And so we walk up and we look, oh, okay, Lee, you have 11 and I have 9, so congratulations, you won. And
Right.
we're not worried about the score while we're playing, because you're absolutely right. I mean, the score, you know, generally speaking, the score should not affect should not influence the shots you're hitting or the strategies you're making. You're going to hit the shot that makes the most sense, ideally, and execute the strategy that makes the most sense. You know, whether the score is 7-7 or 9-7 or, you know, things like that. I mean, you're always working the same process.
right. And you know, and it's one of those things that, you know, when there's money on the line, or a medal on the line, or a podium finish on the line, we put a lot more pressure. But it's at 9-10, that's not the shot that got you there.
Right.
Like, you know, you made mistakes earlier, or they made good shots, whatever, and we just put so much pressure on those end points. And
But it's interesting because we forget about the shots, right? The shots that, and I think about this also in terms of partners, right? Like we'll feel bad because, you know, at 10-9 we missed a shot, and then maybe they win 12-10, right? But we forget about the 4 shots that we hit that got us to 10-9 to begin with.
Right.
You know, I mean, where we contributed positively, we're so focused on the negative thing that happened that we forget all the positives, and it's a jumble of stuff, right? It's the good, the bad, the medium, whatever, jumbled up. That's the end result.
right, but everyone always remembers the lost points.
Oh yeah.
You know, we're all lost point kings and queens, whether we made it or missed it, right?
That's right.
But it's like we just put an enormous amount of pressure on ourselves, and at the end, I mean, I used to make this reference all the time. I come from a heavy tennis background, and the return of serve is probably one of the most stressful moments on the court. You know, somebody can smack a ball 110 miles an hour at you. It is just out past the service line. The ability for your body to recognize, or your eyes to recognize that ball is out, your body instantly relaxes and you hit an amazing return back because there's no pressure, right? But that ball is 1 inch in and we hit a very different shot. So it's like our body does have the ability to relax, and it's like trying to figure out how can we relax through every shot, because the freer you play, the better you're going to play, the more fun you're going to have, the better your results are going to be. No one likes to go out there and you know, oh, I'm so sore. I only played for an hour, but I'm so busy with tennis the whole time. Like, no, just breathe. And it's so much easier said than done, but it's definitely something you got to practice and over-exaggerate the breathing in practice, so it becomes something automatic.
And you touch on something that I think players maybe don't understand well enough, which is this idea that, you know, listeners to this podcast understand the importance of the mental side of things, right? That's the whole point of this podcast. But what we always stress is that there's 2 sides to it. One is you're going to feel better, and that in and of itself is great. You know, have that and enjoy that. But the other side of the coin is what you just said. You're actually going to execute better. So there's a pragmatic side to doing these things like breathing and working on your perspective and your framing of everything. You'll feel better, but you'll also play better. Now, Lee, let's talk a little bit about maybe like a bigger picture. So let's step back from the court. So we're not on the court.
Okay.
And is there anything that you do or anything that you've come across that's helped you in terms of framing your relationship with the game? It's kind of outer body right now. So we're basically stepping away from the sport or a particular match, and to where now when you step out on the court, because, you know, when I see you play, I know you're a competitor, right? I see it in your eyes. I see, you know, when you miss a shot, you know, you get on yourself a little bit, and that's natural. But I also see that you have a lot of joy when you play. You seem to just, you know, you're carrying on, you're smiling, you're talking to the fans and things like that. I mean, tell us a little bit about that process in terms of your relationship with pickleball.
But my relationship with pickleball is very complicated.
As our listeners.
We break up constantly. Yeah, I keep taking pickleball back. Now it's, you know, I have a lot of fun on the court, and maybe it's because I started the game in my 40s, not as a teenager, although I wish that I'd started, or that pickleball, where it is now, I was a teenager, because, you know, chasing the ball that these youngsters keep getting. I hit a good shot and they run and they get like nothing. It's very rude. Yeah, you know, it's like, here we go. But no, to me, it's very important. I know that the Pro Tour currently sits on top of amateur events. And the reason we have fans is because we sit on an amateur event. And Major League Pickleball is slightly different. It's its own event. But it came to light after the other tours had started. So a fan base was already established. So when I'm playing, for me, it's very important to interact with fans, interact with the crowd, because they are the reason I have a platform. And I never want to forget that. And I want to bring them on this journey with me. That is, I want them to feel a part of it because they are a part of it, because the only reason I am here is because of them. You know, I could be the best pickleball player in the world with the audience of nobody. Who cares? Exactly. And it's important for me to, you know, yes, I'll get down on myself if I make a stupid mistake, but it's also important for people to see me laugh at myself for making a silly mistake or a great shot, because they're the shots everybody misses. We've all missed dinks, we've all missed thirds, serves, returns, easy foot-aways, you name it. We've all done that. So, you know, just that brief reprieve or that interaction with a fan, laughing and going, I can't believe I missed that. And they're like, I miss it all the time. I'm like, yeah, it feels so much better. But it's important to have that connection, because it's, you know, competing can be isolating. Even though you're playing doubles, it can be isolating, and it brings a team into it with you, and you're like, you know, let's see if we can wow them more.
And then, yeah, I mean, I think that just having a perspective of, and I love the way you're describing it, because that describes, you know, Lee Whitwell's relationship with the audience, with the fans, and also with the sport as you're playing it. And I think, you know, players out there, whether you're a pro player or not a pro player, you have the same experience, right? In other words, like, if there's your friends are there and they're watching, just engage with them, you know, kind of have more of a relaxed atmosphere of it when you're playing. Not saying that missing the shot's great, not saying that you know, doing your best out there is not important, but keeping it in the framing of a bigger context. Because I'll tell you this, we always ask players, we say, you know, why do you play pickleball? And no one has ever said to us, I play pickleball to win the games. You know, no one's ever answered that. Usually it's fun, exercise, my friends, you know, getting out of the house, being active, things like that.
I'll be the first. I play pickleball because that's the only thing I'm winning. No, I'm kidding.
The story. I want you to. Listeners may not have heard the story of how you got into pickleball, so we're going to get into that in a second. So you brought it up, so we're going to get into that. But you know, the idea that if I came out to play pickleball to see my cohorts, right, to see my friends, why not lean into that, right, when I'm out there, as opposed to leaning into this, you know, I was up, you know, 10-7 and I lost that game. Lean into the positives of the experience. All right, so tell the story. Well, how is it that you got into pickleball, and a little bit maybe what's meant to you, and then in the Riff we're going to talk about some stories that you're going to share about other players. But let's talk about Lee Whitwell right now.
This is my most uncomfortable topic. Not how I got into pickleball. Talking about myself. No, I got into pickleball with a really good friend of mine, Lisa Pouncek, had asked me to play in a tournament. And I said, sure. And then she said, by the way, it's not tennis. And I'm like, what are you asking me to play? And she's like, it's pickleball. I may forget it. Why would I play something my dead grandma could play? And we went back and forth. She said, it's going to be so much fun. You're going to have a blast. I'm like, really? It's a plastic ball. How much fun can I really have? I'm not into fun. I'm super serious. I play tennis. And after about 20 minutes, she's like, fine, I'll buy you a case of beer. And I'm like, don't bury the lead. And you should have led with that. I'm like, I'm in. And sadly, I always knew I had a price. I thought my price would be, you know, Haley will give you $10 million if you snitch. I'm like, it was my dad in the wine cellar with a broomstick. But no, 1995 got me into pickleball with a case of beer. So...
Is that the first time you played pickleball at a tournament? Or
I played at a 502. I think she would have let me play a few days before. No, she wrote rental on a paddle that she owned and let me borrow. And
so you showed up to the tournament, and the first time you ever served a pickleball or hit a pickleball was...
I didn't know the rules. I was serving and volleying. I was in the kitchen. But I had an absolute blast. And not only did I have an absolute blast, but what struck me was coming up to the we played our first match, and I don't know how we won, but we won. I think they took pity on me. And I'm like, okay, I'll see you later. She's like, where are you going? I said, home. She's like, no, there's another match. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, it's doubles. There's no mixed doubles. It's doubles. I said, so we'll play the second match tomorrow, thinking tennis, right? And she's like, no, everything's done today. I'm like, what kind of sport is this? This is now going down a whole different, rabbit hole of like, I don't understand this. How many matches have we played? She's like, about 7. Like, what do you mean 7 matches? Are you insane? So I stayed, and as in between matches, as we were waiting, I was looking around, and I'm like, what is this place? It's, you saw tents and coolers and people and chairs. and of course all levels of playing. And what struck me was how community-based this sport was, how it was people interacting that had seen each other a couple of weeks ago at a previous tournament and reconnecting and this, and and it was just this amazing interaction of people wanting to hang out and be together. And not only that, but just, there were people watching us. I'm like, oh, when are you guys saying, oh no, our bracket finished 2 hours ago, but we're just here for the day watching and hanging out. And I'm like, who does that? So it was very, very fascinating to have that first look into a sport, being like, what is going on here? I'm trying to understand how to play and the rules, first off, which I don't know. Second of all these people not only wanted to come here and play, but want to stay. Right. It was very interesting. And that was sort of the nugget that kept me coming back, of like this community sense of like, wow, look at this. It
goes back to when, we talked about it a little bit during your summer presentation as well during that conversation, but and I think that ties into what we just talked about, which is there's a bigger picture to pickleball, right? Than a pop-up or a missed shot, or it's the community, it's the being around these folks, right? And becoming friends with them, right? There's a shirt I meant to tell you earlier about this shirt. One of our campers had on that was amazing. I think you'd love this shirt, but it says it has like a world on it. It says, if it weren't for pickleball, I would never have met you and you and you and you and you. It's a great shirt. And so it's just there's such a bigger story to pickleball than a pop-up, or than one game that was missed, or one shot that went into the net.
But 100%, people always tell me, it's like, what is so special about pickleball? And I said, at the end of the day, when all is said and done and I'm no longer playing pickleball, what is important to me? Will I remember the trophies, the medals, the wins? I won't. I'll remember the memories, the moments, the interactions with people. That is so much better. I remember at the US Open this year, we played terrible for whatever reason. And I was just bummed, because it's like everything should have pointed. Oh, I know. Everyone was cramping that year. This past year, that's what it was. But everything pointed to the fact that we were on track to podium and win, right? And I was just gutted I don't know why I put so much pressure on myself, but I was just gutted because. And these people came up to me, and this one lady came up to me and said, can I take a photograph? And I just lost. And I'm like, oh, please don't ask me anything else. I'm not in a good space. I said, just give me 1 minute. I've got to put all my stuff away. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I just realized what I've asked. I'm like, no, you're fine. Let me just put my stuff away. And she overheard a conversation I was having with my partner. And she came up to me and she's like, none of us here care if you win or lose. We're fans of you, and we love how you bring us into your match. Don't change. And that struck a huge chord. And then
back to reality.
It brought me back to reality. That's the reason why I do it. It's like, at the end of the day, do the wins matter? In the moment they do. Yeah. But I could have a heartbreak of a loss. It's not going to be in the paper tomorrow. Like, people aren't going to be like, oh my God, there's Lee, she lost. Don't look at it. No one cares. The world keeps turning. Like,
you're not going to be the cover of the Inquirer?
No, but we make it to be this big thing, but we do live in a bubble. Right. And we have to understand that there's life outside of this bubble. And, yes, I definitely want to bring more and more people into this bubble and make this bubble bigger. But at the end of the day, it's your interactions. It's how you make, I always say, people will always remember how you made them feel. So I would like to make people laugh and feel good about themselves. For the most part, I think I do that. Occasionally.
98%.
97% of the time. 3% of the time. If you get the other side of me, you probably deserved it. I'm sorry. But it is. It's like people always remember how you make them feel. And to me, that's what pickleball has allowed me, that vehicle, to be able to make people feel good, to laugh, to enjoy an interaction or a stupid moment that I do on the court, or a great moment, so.
And let me play on that a little bit, because I think I think there's a lot to that, in the sense that you're a pro player, right? So the folks you're interacting with, the US Open are interacting with you, and initially, at least, like that the person who wanted the picture with you, before that, didn't know you, but they knew you, like across the fence, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. And then they had a moment to interact with you, and now they know you on the other side of the fence. What I would suggest is, for anybody listening to this, any player listening to this, you don't have to be a pro player to have a Lee Whitwell moment on the court. What I mean by that is, and I just had this idea, so I think it's pretty good. You tell me what you think. But basically, why can't everybody be like a Lee Whitwell on the court? Meaning, you miss a shot, there's players waiting to play open play. You turn around and go like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I missed that!" Right? And so now it's a fun interaction.
Right.
You're reaching outside of the fence, so to speak, right, and having an interaction with the folks outside the fence, and it gives you a better perspective, a bigger picture of the whole thing. The shot doesn't matter as much because you got 3 people to chuckle with you about it or something.
Exactly, and it is, and
we'll call it the Lee Whitwell approach.
I like that.
All right,
I like that.
We do have a thing called the Hackenberg rule for Jim and Yvonne Hackenberg, so we do name things and they just stick sometimes.
I mean, I have a walkway already, but I prefer this approach better.
It's the Lee Whitwell rule. It was like basically
Lee Whitwell was better than the Whitwell walkway.
That's another podcast.
That's a whole different thing, but no, I mean, it's like, there's a couple for me at the US Open. There's a couple of defining moments, and one of them, and going back to, I think it was a year ago, this one lady came up to me in Arizona, and she's like, "I love your Instagram. I love what you're doing." She's like, "You pulled me out of a really dark place." That is what I do. This is the reason why I do what I do. Did I care that I had a great win? No, that right there trumps everything.
Better than anything.
Yeah, and at the US Open, there's this one lady who came up to me. She's like, "Oh my God, you're so funny in this." I'm like, like, "You're funny." And she's like, "My daughter said I should ask you to do a TikTok. Well, let's do one." And then somebody came up to me and goes, "You don't know her story. But, this is a big deal that she's out here." And she'd been a cancer survivor, stage 4 cancer, you name it. Pickleball she loves pickleball. It's a community. I hate to say pickleball saved her life because,
well, it played a role.
It played a role, and it plays a role in making people better every day in whatever capacity. And we did an Instagram video. We made a reel together, and I think I captioned it, "Hiss, a strong woman everywhere." I said, "Behind a smile, there's a story you'll never understand." And it was a thank you to her. It was a nod to her, because her outlook was so amazing, so positive. And it's like, everyone's fighting battles way bigger than a 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
Or a game to 15. Like, that is the bottom line. And we have to constantly keep that into perspective. And pickleball is a great vehicle. It's a great sport. It brings people together. There are so many stories out there that you hear, somebody's battling cancer, someone lost their partner, their spouse, their son, you name it. Their husband embezzled millions and left them with nothing, and now she's starting over at 50, but pickleball's given her a place to breathe, to press pause and belong, right? So we exist in this space all the time. And I think sometimes as pros, we forget that there is a huge platform that sits underneath us of hundreds and thousands of people who all have stories, who are all there for a reason that is important to them. We're not better than. We don't sit above them. We play alongside them, beside them, with them. And I think if we keep that perspective, we can grow pickleball. The minute we separate that perspective, we're on a collision course for ego and you name it.
And I think we have to view ourselves, Lee, and I think this is how CJ and I view our roles in this whole pickleball ecosystem is, if we have a voice, I think we need to be stewards of the sport for the players more than for us as either professionals or businesses or whatever it is, right? In other words, there's an impact on the in the lives of players out there all over the country, all over the world, and it still has so much more to grow. From my perspective anyway, in terms of overseas and even in our country, and even North America and elsewhere, and so I think we need to be cognizant of that and not lose sight of that, because that's, for instance, like when we took a position on the spin serve, the pre-spun serve, not because we hate the serve or anything like that, because we didn't see it being productive for the larger pickleball community, and I don't want to get caught up on the serve, but that's just an example of trying to be a steward. And I think that's, if I'm hearing you correctly, that's what I'm hearing you say. In other words, that even though you're a pro player, you're saying, I don't want to lose sight of the bigger picture of pickleball and its importance in the community.
100%. And I think, all of us would be making a grave mistake if we ever lost sight of that. We all live and breathe and work in this space, and we need to do whatever we can to keep it growing, to keep it healthy, to keep watering it. It blows my mind every day that I get to play professional pickleball. Who would have thought? B, I get to work in pickleball as well, because I just don't play pro. I do have a full-time, a real job. I do have a full-time job, not that, but who would have thought that this plastic ball would have transformed so many lives? Like, it's crazy how this wave has happened, right? And it's growing internationally. I do have a front seat at the international growth. That's where I do most of my work. And it's a lot of fun to see and see these interactions. But at the end of the day, we play a sport that involves a plastic ball. It's fun. It's inclusive. It's loud. The people who play are loud because of the proximity. And it is just a big backyard where we can all congregate and press pause on our lives for a moment. And that moment, for most people, lasts 7 days a week. But that's okay. But it is. And it's pickleball is making people feel great, feel good about themselves, make them feel like they belong somewhere. And if you want to tap into the psychology of the human condition, what do we all want to do? We all want to feel like we belong and that we're needed. And pickleball provides that in a nutshell.
Now, that's a great message, Lee. I want to ask you for one more piece of advice, if you can share it with the listeners. We always close the podcast. The end of the podcast every week is, if you enjoyed the podcast, share it with a friend. If you enjoyed it, they probably will too. I think let's expand on that. Not the podcast. Let's expand on that on pickleball. So if someone's listening here, and what would you recommend to them, or what are your thoughts about them sharing this beautiful sport with somebody else, a friend, a family member, someone going through a difficult spot in their lives? I mean, what message do you have on that front?
I mean, they may take your spot in open play, and it might. No, they're not going to take it. No, honestly, it's like, if you play pickleball and you think some people who might play pickleball or might want to play pickleball, introduce them to the sport. Go out there and, go have a laugh for 20, 30 minutes, teach them the sport. We all have some level of hand-eye coordination. Some of us is better than others, but we can all make contact with the wall. And the joy you see on people's faces when they start making contact with the wall and then get better and better, right? It's the one sport where you can see improvement very, very quickly. So I think that we are all ambassadors of the sport. We all love pickleball. And we all collectively need to help grow the sport and get people out there playing. And, you never know your neighbor. Introduce your neighbor to pickleball and they'll end up with 300 friends they didn't know they wanted or needed, and you might have saved their life. Honestly, and I don't say that lightly. It's done so much for so many people. And I could go on for hours about the stories I hear every single day about how pickleball has saved someone or changed someone or transformed their life in some way, shape, or form. And we get to play that role and a part in that every day. And that is an honor and a privilege, and we should never take it for granted.
You heard it here from Lee Whitwell. Be active, not just in playing and improving yourself as a player. Be active in helping others learn this amazing sport that you love. Lee, it's always a pleasure to see you, and thank you for being part of the Pickleball Therapy podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.